Sup nerds, if you're watching this, you probably don't want to be writing CloudFormation. It's a lot like Bob the Builder for cloud stuff, only instead of saying, yes we can, it's more like, we're on break. If you're not familiar with CloudFormation, or more general infrastructure as code, think of it as a way to automate making new stuff in the cloud. And there are basically 4 ways to make this stuff. 1, you build it by hand in the console, winging it the entire time like we did in the bad old days. Next, we can build it up from a runbook, like following a recipe. On the next level, you can write that recipe down in one of the different infra as code formats, and bam, fully automated infrastructure deployment in a fraction of the time. But of course, the most popular way is to try and get it as infrastructure as code and end up fixing everything by hand. Now, if you have your choice, you really want to be writing Terraform because it's better in almost every way. But almost every way isn't every way. Let me explain. CloudFormation has 3 major things going for it. I can hand it off to any client with simple instructions on how to deploy. If you've ever had to install a full-on Terraform toolchain with Git and the Unix compatibility stuff on a Windows machine for a client that isn't an IT pro, I'm sure you'll certainly understand the benefit here.
Yeah, right-click on Properties, go to Advanced. You want to have path /Terraform. That's going to be top left-hand to bottom right-hand.
Next, if my goal is to make something I've designed available to the world, AWS makes it really easy to distribute by having single-click deployments available. Seriously, check that one out. I have one in the video description and on the blog article for this video. But most importantly, though, it's that once you click go, it's not your problem. AWS just deals with it, and there's nothing else to mess with. But there are 2 real issues with CloudFormation. It only works with AWS, and there's not much you can do about that one. And it's traditionally slow to develop with. This is something we can improve. So, on that front, we're going to start with the most obvious thing ever, but make it work for real before you start keyboard jockeying your way between stack rollbacks. The reasoning is simple. Doing anything new in code takes significantly longer than doing it in the console. Now, this doesn't mean starting from zero. Not at all. It means you need to start from, and I cannot stress this enough, a working template. If you do not have any template to start from, then just build it in the console and deal with the automation later. Now, before we fire up Notepad and bang out some YAML, maybe we should consider not using garbage tooling. As always, I'll fire up VS Code for this task, and we'll begin by installing the YAML extension. This will take care of catching all your obvious problems and inadequacies in writing YAML. And while it's a good start, CloudFormation in YAML has a lot of shortcuts we can use that'll break the hell out of the syntax checker unless we tell it. So make sure to add these entries to your settings file. While we're doing extensions, we should also grab one of the snippets libraries available for CloudFormation. I'm using the scripting guys over here, and it's great for inserting most of the resources you might use, although it isn't super context aware and adds suggestions in places that it really shouldn't. And please install a spell checker. Nothing looks less professional than misspelling environment 37 times in a row. So now we're ready to code, and many people will begin by writing the YAML equivalent of the Iliad in their first pass.
It's me. I'm many people.
Take that desire behind the woodshed and give it the old Yeller treatment. No, instead we're going to start with whatever validated starter template you have. Deploy that unadorned. Don't have a validated starter template? Then start with this minimal template. It basically deploys nothing, completes nearly instantly, and saves you from that incredibly aggravating design choice where if your first deployment on a stack fails, you need to delete it, instead of uploading a good version of it. Once you have the first one done, deploy every little thing you can in tiny bits. Added a security group, validate, deploy. New instance, deploy. Modify the cloud init script, deploy. Just deploy incrementally so you don't get to the weeds debugging 10 things at once. Now, if it sounds like you're going to be doing a lot of deployments, you're right. And if you also think that means you're going to be copying, pasting, or uploading to the CloudFormation page a lot, then bro, I thought you'd be better than that. I'm very disappointed. See, VS Code has a ton of features for automating things, and we can adjust these in the .vs code folder. There's a task.json file, and in here we'll define a few tasks. The first is the test task, and it runs the validate template command. This command finds egregious issues in your template, but since it never invokes the provisioning service, it won't find everything. But it does keep stupid spelling errors from slowing you down on deploy. To use this, hit Ctrl-Shift-P on Windows or Linux, or Command-Shift-P on a Mac, and type test. Select tasks, run test. If you use this a lot, make sure to add a custom hotkey to it. Next, we add the actual deploy command. Since this needs to know all the parameters, we will hand it a JSON file that has all of them specified. The format of this file is kind of wonky, but feel free to use the script on the blog for this video to extract parameters into the JSON file to make it easier. Now, we make sure this parameters file matches the name we added in the tasks.json file, and we can deploy with the build command. On not Macs, the hotkey is Control-Shift-B. Pop onto the web page for the stack and watch as the magic happens. Now, we can also add a couple more tasks to see how it's deploying on or to delete the stack, but honestly, I usually just do this from the web console. Unless you are the GigaChat of infra coding, a lot of the deploys on larger projects will error out. Letting it fail, then roll back, then fixing that one thing that died leads to a huge time sink guessing at the problem. If you'll recall from earlier, we specified in our deploy task not to roll back. Keeps all the failed resources. This means we can get in there and try to fix things in the console without having to wait for the full rollback redeploy cycle. Once you have that fixed, make the changes to the stack and then redeploy. Always use what you do have as much as you can for debugging before starting a new redeploy cycle. It just saves a ton of time. Alright, let's finish it up with a lightning round. Remember, all this is in the description and the blog post. Need some starter templates. AWS and others keep a repository of them in GitHub. Use those as starter templates and as docs on how to set up many other services. CFN lint exists and can usually replace the validate phase for most projects. The install isn't the best, which is why I'm not calling it mandatory, but it's still a nice option. AWS CloudFormation Guard is a static security analyzer that catches common security problems in your code and gives you a chance to fix it before shipping the template. If you need to coordinate your infra coming up with software also getting deployed, CloudFormation has a set of orchestration parameters and instance definitions that you can use to force resources to wait for a script or scripts to finish running before coming up. Do you have a bunch of stacks that need to work with each other but can't have them reference the other stacks directly? Stick your config parameters into SSM parameter store and reference them in other stacks. This is great for listing out common VPC parameters as well as passing passwords around securely. Hope you found that informative. As always, I'm Dan, dedicated cloud architect. If you've got anything you want to know about CloudWise, drop a question in the comments. If you have any ways to improve on what I've said here, please feel free to tell me. And if I, your humble servant, can do better, please let me know. Thank you, and goodbye, nerds.